Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage your event host and moderator, Bruce Rastetter.
Well, good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the first Iowa Ag Summit, and certainly appreciate you being here. As I thought about the Ag Summit, and as we talked about the world as it is today, the growing need for food production, I couldn't help but step back and think about Iowa's role in that. And as I look out on the crowd today, I see a number of you who have a similar background as mine. As we think about that responsibility, and my father came back from World War II in 1945 and took over the family farm, a 300-acre farm, from his father, who had farmed with horses, and just within that decade. And in 1946, bought his first John Deere tractor, a John Deere B, that looks a little bit different than the tractor today. A little bit easier to drive for some of us at that time. But if we think about, in a generation, what American agriculture has done, and how critical that role, and in particular Iowa's role, and back to a number of us grew up on small farms, with the common message of it's Iowa's responsibility to help feed the world. And with that responsibility of being blessed with 25% of the world's grade A farm ground, that we really felt that's just not a responsibility, but it's a moral responsibility on us, beyond our business, to help ensure that we do that. So as we think about that John Deere B, and not just that this tractor is larger and it's more powerful and it can get over more acres in a day, but it's really the technology that's in that tractor that helps drive efficiency in production and lower food costs. It's the GPS, or the Global Positioning Satellite, that when you get in it and you start it in the field and you push a button and it drives within 1 inch. And beyond that, it's the precision planting. It's the ability to be hooked up to a computer, to that satellite, that applies nutrients to a growing crop to maximize the nutrients, lessen the runoff, do the things that we know to both lower costs, have more efficiency, and produce more from 1 acre for an ever-growing world population. And with that technology has come an education system, but first the education system that allowed us to do that and get better at what we do from a science technology standpoint that's been exported around the world for the benefit of populations everywhere. So as we think about that advancement in a generation and the ability for this world to create more calorie intake than it needs, which wasn't very true not too long ago, we think about the future going forward, which brings us to this summit. I think a lot of us in agriculture talk about that the world is going to go, or the world had its 7th billionth person born in June of 2011. Somewhere around the globe that happened. And we know in a short 40 years, the world is going to go to 9 billion people. So from the beginning of time to June 11, it took to get to 7 billion. We'll add another 2 billion people in 40 years. But beyond that, we know there's growing middle-class populations around the world, in particular in China and India, that are going to demand more food production, in particular higher quality of calorie intake that revolves around protein. So the need for more pork, fish, cattle is going to put demands on row crop production, on grain production, to meet those demand needs. So as we step back and think about the critical components of how we're going to get there, and the last couple weeks has been interesting as reporters around the country ask questions about, is this important to anyone outside of Iowa? And why is it? And I said, sure it is. And they're like, why? Well, the simple answer I had was, because the last time I looked, I think everyone eats every day. But probably the more thoughtful answer is, there is not another industry in this country that affects more Americans than agriculture does every day. And if you think about it, is when you get up in the morning and you flip the light switch, chances are part of that electricity contains wind power that was generated on a family farm by a farmer or a rancher signing easement with that wind company to allow that wind energy to be utilized. And when you go downstairs and you have breakfast, and you have cereal, and hopefully some ham and eggs as well, that may have been bought at a supermarket, but it wasn't produced at the supermarket. A farmer actually produced that, cared about it, wanted to be more efficient, wanted to make sure that he delivered you a product that is healthy and safe and met the consumer needs. And then when you walk out of that door and you get in your car, across this country, there are now 10% blends of ethanol that help lower your gas price, improve the quality of air you breathe, and provide a renewable resource that is made in the U.S. And the day goes on. So the day goes on and continues in a similar manner. And then that evening, if you decide to go to a supermarket or grocery store, the average supermarket in the U.S. has over 48,000 food items. Think about that. Think about how far this country has come. And not only is there 48,000, you have the lowest priced food in this country on a per capita income basis, and the safest food ever in the history of the world. Seriously, ever in the history of the world. So as we think about that whole opportunity and how blessed the U.S. has been with that, I can't help but think and go back to 40 years from now when that 9 billionth person is born in the world. Are we going to ensure that they have that same opportunity that we have had in getting up in the morning and not having to worry about their next meal, not having to worry about where that's coming from and whether it's safe, not having to worry about enjoying food, fiber, and energy from crops that help them in their daily lives live a better life? So as we thought about the Ag Summit and trying to pull all those things together, because it's easy to talk about we need to double food production. You know, and it certainly is. The numbers are there. We need to double food production. But the big question is, how are we going to do that? How actually are we going to do that? And the big question around, because government policy is important in a variety of ways, but also the question is, will government policy allow us in a positive way in this country and around the world to meet those demands? Or will it have a negative impact on a lot of people in this room's ability to do that? So we thought it made sense that we ought to have a discussion. We ought to ask those questions. We're hopeful for answers. We've encouraged them to answer the question. And the other encouragement I've given is not to filibuster the questions. So hopefully we'll see that. But again, it's been a great experience. Appreciate you being here. We're excited about it. Thank you. Look forward to the day.